Hello and welcome. This is Barrett from the C4 Cyber Club here at Cypress College. And in this video today, we're going to cover the NDG Linux Essentials Lab 7, Navigating the File System. So it's not a very big lab, but we will essentially be focusing on navigating the home and system directories and listing files and directories. So moving on to section 7.2. This is essentially pointing out that on a Linux OS, data is stored in files, and files are stored in directories. You can also call the directories folders. This is kind of related to Windows, but technically they are directories. And also very important to note, Linux is case sensitive. So this means if you have a file named capital A, capital B, capital C, this is not the same as a file named of all lowercase letters, ABC. So for our first step, you remember we used the print working directory back in module 5. So what this does, it prints out the current directory that we are currently in. You can see it here as well. So we are in the user bin path. And that's essentially what is most important here, is that the /user/bin is the path. The current folder that we're in is the bin folder, which is also located in the user folder. So this is altogether, this is the path. And now let's go ahead and echo a variable like we also did back in module 5. This is the home variable. And what this is showing is the path of your home folder, which is /home/sysadmin. All right, so now we can use the change directory command, or cd. And if we type in cd followed by a space followed by a /, this is actually going to take us to the root folder, which you notice that it changed to just the / here. And if we print the working directory, you'll see we are just in the root folder here. And if we actually ls do a listing, you see that this is all of those system folders that we've looked at before. So this is also very important. So to change back to your home folder, you can simply type cd and hit enter, and you'll notice the / from the root folder changed to the tilde, which, remember, that represents your home folder. We did pwd here. We see that we are back in our home sysadmin folder. So we will use the cd command again and give it the argument /home. So that is going to move us into the home directory. And whenever you see a / and then a particular path, this is called an absolute path. Now, if it didn't have the / and it was just a local folder within the same directory that you're in, that would be called a relative path. And we'll get to that in just a moment. All right, we can also change back to the home directory by using cd followed by the tilde. So you'll see this actually took us to, we were in home, but now the tilde represents the actual user home folder. So that took us to home /sysadmin path. Right. Now here, what we're doing, we can echo out various home folders. So we want to echo whatever we type out next onto the screen. So we choose the tilde, and then we say we want the home folder location of sysadmin user, of the root user, of the mail user, there are lots of different users on a Linux machine. A lot of them are service accounts. And then let's do nobody. Okay, so you could see what this does. It gives us the home path, the path of the sysadmin home folder. Or actually, sorry, it's giving us the location of the current one that we're in, which is the sysadmin. Then it gives you the sysadmin again. Then it gives you the location of the root home folder. Then the mail folder. And then on nobody, you see that that is actually non-existent, or that means that, excuse me, this user does not have a home folder. So let's try and move into the root folder. So we could say cd tilde root. And you see, we actually get a permission denied because we do not have permission to view the root or what is essentially an administrator account. We don't have access to view that. All right, so now we're going to take a look at using an absolute path again. Remember, if the path begins with a /, this is an absolute path because we're trying to navigate to somewhere that's not in our current directory. So actually, before I type this, and if we did ls, we see these are the folders that we could navigate to as a relative path. So that would mean I could type in cd downloads. That is a relative path. I didn't have to use that / to navigate to that. But instead, let me go and clear the screen, clean that up. So we can use an absolute path. And this is actually taken us well outside of the home folder, all the way back to the root level, the user folder, and then bin. So you see it takes us there. We do print working directory. We're in that directory. And you know, there's really no limit to this. We can move back to the user directory. So we move back a space there. Let's go ahead and move into cd user share doc folder or directory. Okay. So here we can practice using a relative path again. So there is a directory in here called bash. So I do not need to use the /. I can just go directly into the bash directory. Print working directory. We are there. And you can see here in the note, if there wasn't a bash directory under the current directory, the previous command would fail. Kind of like if I said cd user bin, we know that that is a directory somewhere. But because I left out that / to make it an absolute path, it's considering this as a relative path. And that's basically saying there is no user folder in this bash folder, right? Okay, so now some nice handy tips with the cd command. We can do cd space ... to move back one directory. So you'll see we are no longer in that bash directory. We are back in the doc directory. So you can see here the ... represents one level above your current directory location. And we can even, so this is an example of using a relative path to access. We're essentially going to use the ... to go back to the share account and then access the dict or dict for dictionary. We're going to access that directory. And remember, this is technically a relative path. You can see we moved there. And if I just want to show a little bit more. If I went back into that doc, and if I listed this, there's quite a bit. Let me scroll up. You see that there is no DICT folder here. And that is why we needed to move back. So if I went back one more, now you see that is where that folder was. So that's exactly what we did. We ended up, the ... jumped us back to the share folder, and then we moved into this folder here. Okay, let me clear the screen. All right, so we will now explore how to list files and directories. Some of this is going to be a little bit review from Module 5. I know I kind of very naturally showed a bit of this stuff. So to list the contents of the current directory, use the ls command. So let me go ahead and move into the same folder that's on the example here. Okay. All right, so we have an American English file here, and we have a words. This looks like an actual link, or a symbolic link, sorry. So this actually points to another file. So we also went over this before. So ls-a, this is going to show us for hidden files. And let me take us back to the home directory here, like in the example. Okay, clear the screen, ls-a, there you go. So you can see here we have all of these hidden files, and remember, if it has a dot or a period in the front of it, that is a hidden file. You can even create these yourself. So there's a command called touch, and it basically just creates an empty file. If I do touch test1, list the contents, we see test1 is here. But if I did touch dot test2, did ls, we see that test2 does not show up until we add the -a option to show hidden files, and then you see that file there. And remember, we can also list out a path using an absolute path, or I should say list out a directory using an absolute path. So we say, okay, we want to do a long listing with the -l option. The path is /etc hosts. And so this actually doesn't output the files unless we gave a very specific option here, but it does tell us general information about the folder. Like, remember, we were talking about these are related to the ownership and permissions, whether certain users, groups, or other users can read, write, or execute a file or folder. And the lab also details a lot of this stuff that I remember I went over in Module 5. The first character here, this would tell you if it is if it shows up as a blue folder, there would be a D here. In this case, this technically isn't a folder. This is a path. The first 3 characters here represent the user permissions. The next 3 represent the group permissions, and the next 3 represent all other users. So you could say the user root here has read and write permissions. The group root has only read permissions, and all other users on this machine have only read permissions of this path. We can also do, let me go ahead and clear the screen, it's getting a little messy. We could do what's called a recursive listing, and this can actually show us contents of a directory, but also the context of additional subdirectories. So let's do ls-R/etc udev. So you can see we have a file, a .conf file here, and there are two folders or directories. You could tell I use folders and directories interchangeably. They are the same thing. And then you see it does list out those two directories here. This one is empty. This one here has two files in it. And here's a good tip. Be careful of the -R option. Some directories are very, very large. It's very true. If you do a recursive listing on certain directories, it may be listing a lot of information. All right, and we can, so back on the topic of globbing, we also touched on this a little bit in Module 5. We'll work with the asterisk symbol here again. So let's do ls-d /etc/s asterisk. So let's break this command down. We're doing a listing with ls command. The -d actually will prevent files from subdirectories from being displayed. So we're only looking at what's inside of anything that begins with an S, and it could end with as many characters after that. Okay, so you can see we're in the Etsy folder and all of these, and this is all of the directories that begin with the letter S. And files as well, I should say. So a lot of these are files. Remember, the white are files, the blue are directories. The question mark globbing character essentially will tell the command to match it with anything that has this amount of characters. So it'd be 4 because there's 4 question marks. If there were only 3, it would match any directories that have 3 characters in them. So let's try that out. ls-g, d. And I totally typed that in wrong. Let me press up. Here's a good tip. If you accidentally add a typo, remember you could press up on your keyboard to bring up your history. You could press the home key to jump to the very front of that line. And I just needed to change that from LD typo to LS. All right. So you can see we got returned back all of these directories that have 4 characters in them. And the final section of this module, we can use the square brackets to specify a single character to match from a set of characters. In this case, we're going to be looking for anything that begins with A, B, C, or D, and then includes, you remember the asterisk, any number of characters after it. So here we're actually using 2 different globbing characters. So add the brackets, A, B, C, D, close out with the right bracket, then the asterisk. And so you can see we have everything that begins with A, everything with B, C, and then D over here. So that is it. And that concludes Linux Essentials Lab 7, Navigating the File System. Thanks a lot for watching, and I will see you in the next one.